Hello aliens, welcome back to my channel, and this is the next video wherein we are going to learn a new concept of Java, and this concept is called as how you can remove an element from an array specifically in Java language. So it's quite an interesting one. It's a good concept for beginners. You can tend to learn some new things while performing this task, though it's not a very difficult one because it's a beginner level problem. So yes, without wasting further any time, let's get into the logic and we will see that how we can write a code in for this particular concept. So the concept is quite simple. In order to start with this video, I would suggest you to understand the basic concepts of Java, array in Java language, that how you can write an array in Java language, and also how you can perform the for loops in Java, and also how you can import the input from a user. So these are the prerequisites I would suggest you to have before starting this video. If you're already familiar with these concepts, then yes, this video is for you and you can just go with that. So without wasting any further time, let's try to understand the logic first, and then we will see how we can write the code. So the question is saying that how you can remove an element from array in Java language. So I will explain you the logic with an example. So let's suppose this is your old array. This is the array that you have received, and this is the original array that you have. So the array is called as animals, right? So you have 5 different animals in your array, and this is lion, dog, cat, cow, frog. So let's suppose if you want to remove any specific element in this particular array, so you will ask your user to enter the element you want to remove. And let's suppose that your user is saying that I want to remove the specific element, which is dog. It can be anything. Like if the user is saying that I want to remove the lion, cat, cow, frog, any element that the user wants to remove. So you just need to remove that specific element from the array, right? And your new array becomes lion, cat, cow, frog. So this means the second element from the array has been removed. And let's suppose if the user is saying that I want to remove the cat, then you have to remove the cat, and you will be having your new element as this, right? So this is something that we want to do. It's quite simple, right? So how you can do that? So what you need to do, let's suppose if the user is saying that I want to remove the element called as dog, so you need to match all the elements of your array with this element. So you need to match dog with lion, dog, cat, cow, frog. So whenever the match comes with the array, with that specific element of your array, then you just have to remove that element. You have to remove that element, and you have to pass on all the other elements to the new array. That's what the logic is saying. And also the main concept, very main logic which is there in order to write the code is that so you need to specifically look at one thing. So this is your old array, and it is having 5 elements, right? And this new array is having 4 number of elements. So this means that whatever the new array that you are getting is having 1 less element from the previous array. So this means if the array, say if the original length of the array is 10, then a new array after removing 1 element will be having 9 number of elements, right? So this is the main concept. So what you can do is that you can create a new array which is having 1 less element of the previous array, and you need to pass on all the elements of the old array. Just have to remove the element which is being mentioned by the user that he or she wants to remove that one. Okay, so this is the concept, right? It's quite a simple one. We will see that how we can implement in Java language, what's the logic and what's the code that we have to write. So what we're going to be doing, like what are the tasks that we have to perform while writing the code? So the task is firstly, just to show the the old array to the user, we're just going to be printing the old array to the user at the very first, and then we will ask the user for the string, like whatever the element that the user wants to remove from the array, he will just simply enter that particular one. And once that is done, once we will just take the input from the user, and then simply we're just going to be printing the new array that we're going to be receiving after performing all the tasks that we want to do. Right, so this is what the simple task that we have to do, just the 3 simple things that we have to perform, and basis on that we will be able to just have the code, and we will be able to remove the array. We will be able to remove the element from the array. So in order to perform that task, so I have created a class which is having my main function. So yes, we have to firstly, okay, so let's do one thing one by one. Okay, so let me just start with the code as of now. Give me a second. All right, so what we're going to be doing over here is that we're going to be having a string, right? And my string is, I will just simply call this as animals, right? And this is going to be my array. So I have to define it properly. And what? So I will be having some animals over here in this array. So I will be having simple names: dog, cat, bat. I will call this as fish. And what else? We have cow, and we can have bulls, right? We can have beer. So these are the elements that I am just mentioning over here in my animal array. And based on that, I will ask my user that whatever the element that you want to remove from your array, you can just simply enter that. So how do we do that? We have to take the input from the user. So this means I will also have to import the library for that, right? So we're going to be doing that as well. Okay, so let me just first put this all in the quotes, and then we will proceed further. All right, so my array has been defined, and now I will have to import the library. So this means I have to use the import scanner. Okay, I think, all right. So import java dot util.scanner. So this is the library that I need to import so as to take the input from the user. So I have my array, I have my library in my hand, and what next? So I will create the object for this, and scanner input equals new input new and scanner system dot in. All right, so I have got everything now, and I have just created the object over here. So what we're going to be doing next, we will ask our user system dot out dot println dot. So we're going to be asking our user which, okay, I think I've just made a mistake. All right, which element, which animal you want to remove. All right, so I have to do one more thing over here before performing this particular thing. So as of now, I haven't printed this particular array that I have. So in order to do that, I will just create a simple function over here so that it's going to be easy for my user to see first what are the elements that we have. So what I'm going to be doing is that I will be creating a simple function over here, which is void static void. Okay, so yes, as we're going to be just creating the functions in our main, okay, print array. So I will be just doing one thing over here. So I will be just creating a function over here which is called as print array, so as to print the arrays whatever I have in my main function. So in order to do that, so basically so yeah, that's going to be little bit better, because I want my user to have an understanding what are the elements that we have in the array, and basis on that he can just go for the selection, right? So I will be calling this function over here as well. So this is my print array function, right? And I need to pass on the array over here. So this is my animals which I want to pass. So this means it's having the, so this particular function is taking the arguments as string. So this means this has to be an array, and I will call this as passed array, right? So I will call this as passed array, and for that thing, in order to print the elements of the array, I need to use the for loop for that, and I will be creating a variable which is int I equals to 0, and I will have to have this particular array working till the time passed array dot length I plus plus. All right, so this particular array, I want this to be working till the time it's completing the length of the array. So this means, okay, so what are the things that I need left with? So I need to, so the print array is having, okay, let's do one thing over here. So I need to print all these elements. So for that thing, I need to system.out.println, not println, I would just call it as print, okay, because I just want to have this in a single line. So it's to print all the elements, and passed array, and I need to print all the elements. So this means I can just pass on the this comma plus. So this is the concatenation operator that we have to use. So this means it's going to be printing all the elements in a single line. And what next? So it's going to be printing the array, and I also need to print a message over here that this is your old array. Okay, so older version is something which we can write over here, right? Okay, older version of array, and yes, next line, it's going to be printing this from the next line. Okay, so older version of the array, and it's going to be printing all the elements. So next line will be there, and what next? So the array is going to be printed, and now, all right, so basically I have printed. As of now, let's try to understand what we have done, and basis on that we'll proceed further. So the very first thing that we have done is we have imported the library, and then we have created the array, and I'm printing this particular array over here. I'm passing this to print array, and I'm also printing the older version. So next is I'm taking the input from the which animal that you want to remove, right? And now the main thing is going to start. So the user is going to be just inputting. Okay, so the user is going to be giving us the input, and he's going to be passing on some string from this particular one, and from there I have to pass on that element to a function. So I have to create a new function for that. So let's do one thing over here. We will create the same function. We will create the function in the same class. I don't want to create a separate class for this, so I will call that function as static. So this time I need to return something, right? So for that thing, so let's first of all define the function, and I will define that function as del delete element. So this is the function that I want to call so in order to delete the element from a specific function. So this, okay, I have to call this as string, and I'm going to be just returning the string for this, and string that to be within with some sort of an array that will be returned. And for that thing, okay, so which animal you want to remove, and the next thing is I have to call this function. So in order to call this function, this is my delete element function, which is going to be called over here. And in order to call this function, what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be passing on two different elements. The very first one has to be so input dot next line. So input dot next line is something which I have to pass, and the second thing that I have to pass is the array. So these are the two elements that I need to pass in order to perform the function. So this is my delete element function that I'm creating over here. So delete element function is something which is going to work on two different things. The very first thing is, it needs to have the original array that I'm creating, and the second thing that this delete element needs to have is the input that we are going to be receiving from the user. So these are the two things, and once the operation will be done, it's gonna return back an array, and the new array will be the one which is gonna be like the new array will be containing the removed element, right? So this is the task that we have to perform. All right, so the function has been created, and let's do one thing over here. We will be okay, so let's do one thing. Let's try to perform certain things over here. So the very first argument, the very first parameter that I'm receiving over here is the array. So this means this particular array has to be, there has to be an array that needs to be defined over here. So I'll call this as new animals. Yeah, so this is something that we can call, and this is the input that we are receiving from the user, right? So this needs to be called as we can call this as string animal remove, right? So this is something that we can call this function, right? And now let's see what's the error. So okay, so it is just saying that I have to return something because I'm calling this function as string. This is having the string type, and that to be with an array. So that means I have to return something, and I will do that because we have already defined this thing that whatever the operation that we are doing on the array as well as the input that we have received from the user in this particular function, we need to return back some array after its operation. So how do we do that? So basically the very first thing that we have to do is that this, okay, so first of all, this is the array that we are receiving from the user, right? New animals. And I have to do one thing over here. I have to create an array once again over here. I can call this as animals, and this new array has to have one less element, because alright guys, so let's try to understand the logic over here, that what exactly we are trying to do. So basically, as you can see that as of now we have only implemented one function, which is print array. So now that we are trying to implement the second function, which is going to be accepting two different arguments, right? So the very first thing is the array that we have created, the original array, and the second one is the input that we have received from the user. So in order to perform the task that we want, in order to delete the element from an array, we need to create a new array which should be having the number of elements as one less than the elements that we have in the original array, because the new array which will be having one less element is the one from which we are going to be just returning back to the original function. And this array which will be having one less element is the new array which is not going to be containing the element that we want to remove. So that's the reason we have to create this particular new array over here. So this means this new array which I'm going to be creating over here, string animals, is going to be having, right, it's going to be having the number of elements as one less. So this means new animals having the length as whatever the length that we have. So we have to have that as one less. So let's see what is the error that we are getting over here. Okay, so this string new animals needs to be defined as an array. Okay, so that's what we have done over here, right? string animals, this is the array that we have already defined over here, and basically we need to start the execution now. So for that thing, what we're going to be doing is that we're going to be working on a for loop. So this particular for loop is having, okay, so let's try to run the alright, so this particular for loop, I want this to be working till the time this new animals that we have received from the original function, right? So this is something that we have to do. So this needs to be working till the end of its last element. And what next? What we need to do? So we need to check all the elements, right? And so we need to check all the elements of this particular array. Whenever the match comes, we need to stop the execution. We don't need to work on that particular element, right? So that's what we want to do. So when the match comes, so this means I have to, okay, so there is a new concept that I want to mention over here, and you need to take a look on that one. So this particular thing is saying, okay, let me show you. So basically you need to understand this thing. So whenever we want to match, whenever we want to compare two string, right? So we need to use these three functions. These are the best one. I will explain you what is the logic behind that. So in order to understand these concepts in a better way, and if you want to understand in detail, you can go to this link. I'll mention that link on the in the description box. But in just a quick way, I want to mention that if you want to compare the two string elements, then you can use this particular function, which is equals. If you want to perfectly match the two strings, like if you don't want to, if you really care about the uppercase and the lower cases, and if you just want to ignore the cases, like you don't want to worry about the uppercase or the lower cases, then you can use this particular function, equals ignore case. And this compare to is the one which is required when you want to compare the string elements within the array, within the list. Then you have to use this particular one. And if you want to sort the list, if you want to sort the array, then you have to use that function. So over here we're just not going to be worrying about the upper cases, the lower cases, so we're going to be just using this one. So what this particular operation is going to do, so we have to compare animal to remove, right? We have to compare animal to remove with the elements of this one, right? We need to compare new animals elements, right? So what we're going to be doing over here, so we can do one thing over here. Whenever the new animals is gonna be equal ignore, case, right? And we want to pass on the function as we will need to pass on the string over here, animal to remove. All right, so what this particular operation is going to do, whenever new animals, okay, so I have to, because this is an array and I have to mention the specific element. So this is a for loop which is working over here. Whenever the new animals having its ith element is gonna be matching with animal to remove, then it's gonna return the value as true. And if that's not gonna happen, okay, I have messed over equals. Okay, so this equals to ignore case is gonna do one thing over here. When the new animals dot its ith elements, when it's gonna match with animal to remove, it's gonna return the value as true. So that means whenever I'm getting the true, whenever the element matches, we just need to do one thing over here. We just need to skip that particular element, and we don't want to do anything, right? And if we just want to skip that element, so this continue operator is going to perform that task. It's just going to skip that particular execution of the for loop. And if the match won't happen, then what we want to do, we need to pass on the element to the new array, which is our animals. Its ith element needs to, okay, so we need to do one thing over here. Let me just first mention this and then I will tell you what we need to do. So animals ith element needs to be passed on to this, but as of now we cannot call this to be as the ith element. We need to do one thing over here. We need to create a counter over here and we have to initialize that with 0. So this means we need to pass on the counter over here, because what's going to happen, so let's try to understand what is happening in this particular for loop, and basis on that we will look at the execution. So what we are exactly doing is we are creating a for loop, and this for loop is going to be starting from 0 till the last element of the array that we have passed on. So new elements, right? And it's going to be working till the last element, and we are checking all the elements of this array. So whenever the new animals is matching with the string which is the user input string, user input animal, so at that point in time it's just gonna skip the for loop execution. And instead of that, if it's not matching, then what we are doing is that we have created a new array which is animals, which is having the length as 1 less than the original array that we had. So it's going to be passing on that element to this animal. So basically what is happening, so this is having 1 less element, so this means we need to have a separate counter for this. So whenever there is a new element which is coming onto this particular new array, we want the counter to get incremented by 1. So this means so we are going to be starting from 0th position, so that means we have to create 1 by 1, right? So let's try to understand what is happening over here. So let's suppose, I will explain you one thing. So we have 5 number of animals over here, right? And this is our old array and this is our new array. So the user is saying that I want to remove the dog element over here, right? So the dog element has to be removed, and we need to have line cat. Okay, so you can understand one thing over here. This is our 0th element, right? And this is our new array which is having the 0th element. So this means the counter is starting. So let me show. So this is our counter, right? This is the counter is starting from the 0th element. So this is the value of I over here. Okay, so the I is starting from 0 and the counter is also starting from the 0th position. So the line is something which is not matching, right? So this means it's not matching, line is not matching with the dog. So we will just simply go ahead and pass on the element line over here. So the 0th position has been passed, and next is the ith position. Ith is 1, right? And over here the dog matches, right? And a dog matches, it's gonna just simply skip this particular execution. Dog is gonna, so the if in this particular position, it's gonna just simply, whenever the match comes, it's gonna skip the execution over here. And next thing is, it's gonna be second, it's gonna be working for the 0 1 2. The ith value will be 2. The cat is not matching with the dog, so this means we want to pass this particular cat to the new array, right? So this is gonna be passed, right? And over here we want the counter to be incremented because this new array will be having different index values. So that means we want the cat position to be at the first position, not on the second position, otherwise we will get the error. So that's the reason we need to have a separate counter for the new array. So that's what we are doing. So that's going to work in that way, and the counter will be incremented, right? And once that execution is going to complete, once that for loop is going to work, we want to return the array back to the main function. So for that thing, we have to mention that we want Okay, so this is our animals, right? So we want to return the animals, and it's going to come back to this particular position, which is this. The animals will be updated over here. So that means our work has been done, and we just want to print this array. So this is the new version of the array that we have created. And yeah, that's pretty much it. Let's try to execute the code now, and we will see the output. So I believe it's going to work perfectly fine, because I don't think we have created any kind of an error over here. So let's try to run the code. Okay, so let's see how the execution is going to work. Okay, I think it's not. Let's try to print the elements in a better way, in a clean way, so that we have something better to showcase. Okay, so this is the older version of the array that we have, and it is showing the older version, and it asking us that which element that you want to remove. So we want to remove the cat over here, and let's see how the output is coming. Okay, as you can see that the cat has been removed. We have dog, bat, fish, cow, bull, bear. And let's try to run the code once again, and we will try to remove some other element now. So I want to remove fish this time. So let's see. Okay, so it has removed the fish. It's pretty simple and pretty cool, right? So it's working perfectly fine. So the new version of the array is having dog, cat, bat, and fish has been removed, cow, bull, bear. And let's try to do one thing once again. We will try to remove the very last element. So we will try to remove bear. So that's it. And let's try to remove the very first element. I hope it's going to work once again perfectly fine. So we want to remove the dog this time. Okay, so cat, it's going to be starting from the cat, bat, fish, cow, bull, bear. All right, sweet. So it's working perfectly fine. The code is executed. I will mention everything in the description box. I will mention the code, and it's pretty easy. I mean, you can do one thing over here. What are the tweaks that you can do is that you can ask the user to create a new array, and basis on that, you can ask the user once again. I mean, there are separate operations that you will have to create. So you will have to ask the user what you want to do. Firstly, you want to enter and create the array, and then you can ask the user to do the second task, that is to remove the specific element. That's how you can build the logic. I mean, you can definitely create certain things, but as of now, it's a pretty simple program. I hope you were able to understand what I mentioned and how I explained the logic. So the logic is quite simple. Just have to create a new array which is having one less element, and that new array has to have some operation needs to be done, that you have to create, that you have to compare all the elements, and basis on that you can pass those elements to the new array, and then you can print that array and can return back to the old array that you had. So yeah, that's pretty much it. I believe the video is again quite long, but yes, I was trying to explain everything in details. That's the reason the video was long. So yeah, that's pretty much it. Thank you for your time, guys. Thanks for watching the video. See you next time.